Hey, my name is Pete. I'm the lead pastor here at Glen Park, and this is part of my testimony. Well, I was blessed to grow up in a Christian home. My mom and my dad were in ministry. My dad was a pastor. My parents were missionaries growing up. Kind of a different kind of missionary, home missionary. So we lived in the United States. We traveled from church to church every 2 or 3 years as a revitalization kind of ministry. And so moved a lot, like 16 times by the time I was 16 or something, some crazy number. But I was fortunate. I've learned that I was fortunate to grow up in a home with people who love Jesus. And so as a result of my parents just doing what they should be doing as parents, loving Jesus, they would sit with us and do devotionals when we were kids. And so because of that, as a result of that, on September 25th, 1986, I think I heard the gospel for the very first time. Not that my parents hadn't shared the gospel with me, but I got it. Like, that was the moment where it made sense. I knew that if I were to die without Jesus, that I would spend eternity in hell. I knew that I deserved that. So I remember the day like it was yesterday, of just this kind of, not even a fear, but just a real recognizing that that if I were to die without Jesus, I would be lost for eternity. And I knew what he did on the cross. I'd heard about that, but it made sense to me this day. And so that was the day that I prayed. I asked Jesus to forgive my sin, gave him my life, and that's the day he saved me. When I was 17 or 18, I think is when I met April. And I was 19 when we got married, and she was 20, maybe 21. Pretty young. We had Marshall right away. 9 months later, so not right away, but and in the midst of that, I made some really bad choices in life, and began to have conversations with other women, and that was pretty destructive, as you might imagine. We ended up pregnant with the twins, and things just kind of fell apart, started beginning to fall apart. We had the twins in August of 2001, and that was pretty much the end of our marriage at that point. I would say by November, we were probably separated. And I was homeless for a while, lived in my truck, crashed on people's couches. I remember some of the worst things. Some of the worst things were like, because I was wrong, I was in the wrong, I'm the idiot, like everybody kind of abandoned me. That's how I felt. I don't know if it's true, but I didn't have any family who would talk to me in a loving way, and at least it didn't seem like it. I didn't get to see my kids for a long time, and all the while, it didn't matter what I was doing. I knew what I was doing was wrong. I got kind of depressed, I guess. Started drinking a lot. And it just didn't matter what I did. I knew that what I was doing was wrong. I knew that not being with April and the kids was wrong. I knew that every part of what was going on was sinful and that God hated it. And yet, it just kept going on. We tried to work it out a few times. Went to counselors. It seemed like every time that we would try, like the reality of what had happened would just come back. And everything would just explode again. It was probably 2 years worth of being separated and being divorced. In between that time, I can remember I went to church a little bit, but I can remember 2 Sundays that I went, and it was to a church that I never went to except for these 2 Sundays. And I remember the first Sunday that I went, the preacher was preaching about what it is to be a godly father. And I was like, well, yeah, I need to go be a dad to my kids. And so, we talked, I talked to April, and we tried to kind of work things out. We did the counseling, like I said, and the counselor that we went to was a pastor that I knew, and he right out asked us, like, are you here doing this because of your children? And we didn't have any other answer but yes. And so he told us we could leave and not come back because that was the wrong reason. And so then I went on the run again, and it was probably 6 months later that I went back to that church for whatever reason, and the preacher was preaching on what it is to be a godly husband. And that's when I realized that I really have been thinking about things the wrong way. I've been selfish. I probably wouldn't have agreed with myself now back then, but being selfish, being stupid, just thinking about garbage that doesn't matter, And so I had to humble myself, and so I sent April flowers and told her that I wanted to spend forever with her, and eventually she allowed me to kind of be back in her life, and we began to work on things, and we ended up getting remarried. Been married for almost 24 years at this point today. But it wasn't like it didn't get easy. Like, I don't think thinking about being reconciled to your wife, that's what Scripture tells us to do. I don't think we were reconciled with each other. Like, we said we were sorry, and we were in the process of forgiving and working through things, but there was a solid 5 years of constant battle between the two of us, and I had really found myself in a place where, like, before God and I had confessed my sin. I had named what I had done. I had talked very clearly with God about what I had been doing and why it was wrong and how I knew that and what I understood, and asked for forgiveness. And I know, because I know Scripture, that Jesus forgave me, that He, 1 John 1:9 says, if we confess our sin, He's faithful and just to forgive us from our sin, to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. And so I know that He did. And then yet I would go home and I would fight this battle. And I don't blame April for it. I was the idiot in the whole thing. But she had a thing that she would say to get kind of under my skin, and it would just destroy me every time I heard it, because it was a reminder of my mistakes. And I can remember reaching a point where I just told her, like, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep reliving the past. I want to relive the past. I don't want to think about that. Like, I've asked Jesus to forgive me. I know that he did, because he promised he would, and so I can't do it. And if you can't move past it, if you gotta keep bringing it up, then I won't come home, and then I'll leave you alone, and you can do whatever you want to do. And that was the day that life changed for everybody. I went to work. I own my own business, shoeing horses and stuff, and so I went to work. I would work 10 or 12-hour days, so it was easy for me to just be gone. But I went to work, and I got a call later in the day that said, "Hey, I want you to come home." And that was from April. So what had happened during that time was she had hit her rock bottom. I had thought that April was a godly woman. Our whole marriage, I thought that she was a believer in Jesus, and man, but this day, this was the day that April gave her life to Jesus. The day that she hit her knees and said, "I can't do it anymore, and I don't want to try without you, Jesus." And so, the day that April got saved, the day that I told her I wouldn't come home if she didn't want me to, like, God just began to work in our lives from that day on. And I mean it, from that day on. Like, life has never been the same between us. It was like going from fighting a battle against each other to fighting a battle together. And this time, the battle we were fighting was for the good, and we were striving to please Jesus together, to live for Jesus together. And so all those 5 years of just super difficult days, like on this day, I believe God reconciled us to each other. He reconciled me to him in 1986. He reconciled my wife to him on this day that we had this huge argument. And then in the events of all of that, like, reconciled us together in that moment. All I know is that the most beautiful moments in my life are the moments where reconciliation happens, where it seems like there's no way out. It seems like there's no way that things could be better, that can be made right, that you're going to fix that relationship, or you're not going to have that person be upset at you, or whatever it might be. And then suddenly, like, God out of nowhere just begins to work on their hearts and your heart, and then he brings you to this place where you can just sit together and even worship together and really just, like, be family again. It's pretty awesome. My name is Pete McLeod, and this is part of my testimony.
Who did you worship? Who did you trust? Was it God or something